I've been thinking about what leads to success in my life, in work, in writing, in friendship, in hobbies, and I keep coming back to one thing: curiosity. A lot of the time I'm striving for discipline, and discipline is important. It's important to be able to do the hard thing. But I find that discipline pushes, whereas curiosity pulls. And that feeling of being pulled towards something is so incredible. It's energizing, it's inspiring. I noticed some of the areas where it shows up naturally. In conversations with creatives, I tend to feel curious and excited when you're asking questions and going down that rabbit hole together. And I started to wonder if I could create that for myself. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Take a deep breath. You've made it to the writing woods. As always, there is no pressure here, no stress. We're building sustainable, lifelong writing practices together. And if you're looking for more folks who are on this journey with us, head over to writingwoods.com. It's our free community for writers to get to know each other, to discuss their practice and make the work visible, and to work toward building writing practices that bring them joy. All right, let's talk about why curiosity is important. It is this feeling of being pulled towards something instead of pushed. It's intrinsic motivation. You don't have to force yourself. It's something you want to do, you want to find out. My favorite stories that I've written tend to start with a big what if. And when that is the driving force behind my writing, the work gets done faster, I enjoy it more, and it tends to be better, something I'm really proud of. And this isn't just anecdotal. We actually know that curiosity improves learning and memory. In a 2014 study, researchers had participants rate how curious they were to know the answers to trivia questions. When curiosity was high, participants remembered the answers better. And interestingly, they also remembered better unrelated information that they learned while waiting for those answers. So being in a state of curiosity actually changes the way our brain is processing all the information we're receiving, not just the information we are specifically curious about. And so it's not surprising that when we feel curious, we are engaging with our writing, with our stories, in a deeper, more meaningful way. And this can feel a little discouraging because curiosity isn't necessarily something we can control. It just appears when it appears. But I think there's a way around that. I think there is a way to create curiosity. And before we get to that, let's talk about the things that actually block our curiosity. So curiosity needs space, time, and an orientation toward wandering instead of accomplishment. This can be really difficult in a world that really values outcomes. If we are focused on the outcome, curiosity will not appear. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but curiosity requires meandering. So if we're too focused on, I need to write 1,000 words today, we're putting our brain in a state to ignore the side quests and the wandering that can lead to that learning and curiosity. Another thing that shuts down curiosity immediately is a fear of failure. Curiosity has no ego. The entire process requires accepting that we do not know things and viewing that as an opportunity rather than a failure. Being curious requires that we're gonna hit dead ends, we're gonna backtrack, and we're gonna waste time. So to become curious, we need to remove the ego and fall in love with the failure. The third thing that blocks curiosity is familiarity. If everything is the same, if we stay in our familiar setting, our familiar routine, then we're not exposing ourselves to that new novel stimulation that's going to lead to questions. And finally, constant stimulation, especially where technology is concerned, removes the space that is needed to generate interest and curiosity. If we're constantly flooding our brain with content, with answers to questions that we didn't even think to ask, then we don't have the room to wonder. All four of these things block curiosity by minimizing our ability to provide the one element curiosity needs to thrive. Curiosity requires a tolerance for uncertainty. If our immediate response to uncertainty is to eliminate it, to optimize it, to scroll it away, we don't spend much time wondering. Curiosity is a positive orientation toward the unknown. Fear and curiosity can encounter the same unknown and respond completely differently. Fear tries to solve it, and curiosity tries to understand it. And writing from a place of fear, from a place of trying to solve the problem, feels completely different than writing from a place of curiosity. All right, I said there is a way to generate curiosity without waiting for the feeling. And this has to do with a concept I have discussed in previous episodes. Exploration versus exploitation. Exploitation is drilling deep into something you already know works. You are optimizing, executing. Exploration is trying something new without knowing what you're going to get from it. It's experimenting, wandering. Both are necessary, and creative tasks typically require us to oscillate between the two. Explore and generate ideas, and then drill down into one and create something tangible. When I think about exploration, though, I have generally thought of it as a result of curiosity. When you're curious about something, you go exploring. You try to learn about it, and you follow the threads that your questions create. But as I was considering how to generate curiosity, I realized that the inverse might also be true. Curiosity itself can be a result of exploration. If you spend time exploring, wandering, investigating a topic, then you're likely to become curious as a result of that. Your mind is going to be stimulated by the new ideas and discoveries, even if you weren't intrinsically curious and especially interested at the beginning. You know how a lot of the time finding the answer to one question just leads to another? Basically, we're trying to jumpstart that process. Skip the initial need to feel curious. Go straight into the exploration. Then that feeling of curiosity will naturally arise. You don't necessarily need to feel curious first. You can go looking. And once you encounter something unexpected, your brain naturally has questions. And this gives us control over that state of curiosity that can be so beneficial to our creative process. We don't have to wait for a question to appear in order to become curious. The first step now belongs to us. By initiating the exploration ourselves, we are putting ourselves in a situation where curiosity thrives. We'll begin the chain reaction of one question leading to another. And writers, by our nature, are naturally curious. So we're not fighting against our instincts here. We are just putting ourselves in the right situation and giving our natural curiosity room to breathe. Some practical ways to start this process of exploration and jumpstart our curiosity. We're going to use practices that nullify each of those curiosity blocks that we talked about earlier. Number one, separate from the outcome. We want to explore something that does not have to accomplish anything. Research something because it's interesting, not because you need to know the answers. It doesn't even have to be related to your project. You could keep a running list of things that you think about randomly that could be interesting to research, and sit down, pick one, and let yourself go down the rabbit hole. Write something you know will not go into your book, just for the fun of it, just to see where it might lead. Have a conversation without trying to solve a problem, without having an end in mind. When we're not focused on the outcome, we allow curiosity to pull us towards something instead of using discipline to push ourselves. And once you get into this mindset, you can apply it to your main project. Number two is to release ego and embrace failure. Ask stupid questions. Follow ideas that might be wrong or useless. Write the ridiculous version of something. Explore something that you know nothing about. Because exploration involves dead ends. If every path has to prove you were smart to take it, then you're not really exploring. You're just hedging your bets. Reframe these things as an important part of your writing process. It could feel like procrastination because it is not directly related to what you're trying to accomplish. But pay attention to how you feel when you transition from this sort of exploration, where you have no ego, no intended outcome, and no fear of failure, where you are just playing and letting your mind wander and learn. Pay attention to how you feel when you transition to your main project. Are you bringing that attitude with you? Does it feel easier to create once you're in this frame of mind? If so, it's not procrastination. It's part of the process. Number 3, step out of the familiar. Efficiency thrives on routines and automation. The habits that you do without thinking about it. They're very efficient, but they don't create curiosity. Go somewhere new. Talk to someone different about your story or about something else. Curiosity thrives in conversations with unfamiliar perspectives. Research a new subject, write in a new genre, read something you would not normally read. You need to encounter things that your existing mental model of the world does not immediately explain. To have that moment of, what's that? Or, I wonder why they see it that way. And then to grow and expand around those questions. And number 4 is to remove stimulation. Now this almost sounds like the opposite of stepping out of the familiar, but it's not. The trick is to first give your brain something new to encounter, to understand, and then to stop giving it new things. Put your phone down, drive without a podcast, walk without headphones. You're creating an opportunity for your mind to wander back toward the thing that caught it in the first place. Because if we are constantly giving our brains more and more stimulation, we're just overloading our mind with answers. And that is the antithesis of curiosity. We are looking to give our brain questions. So give it something to chew on and then let it. And ideally, minimize the number of major projects you're working on. Allow your thoughts to keep coming back to the same project. Now, there is a trade-off here that I want to acknowledge. Working from curiosity will not always be the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. In fact, it probably won't be, and that's kind of the point. Exploration is not a straight line. You're gonna follow threads that lead nowhere. You're gonna research things you don't use. You're gonna write scenes that do not wind up in your finished project. And if your only metric is how quickly you wrote 1,000 words, that time is gonna appear wasted. But I think that we sometimes optimize the individual writing session at the expense of the writing life. Because if we are using curiosity to pull us toward the work instead of using discipline to push ourselves toward it, the writing feels easier, more enjoyable, energizing instead of draining. And over months and years, that matters. It helps us write consistently over long periods of time instead of getting burnt out. The fastest route through today's 1,000 words is not necessarily the route that keeps us writing consistently for the next year, for the next 10 years. So using this mindset of curiosity can absolutely be inefficient. But in the long term, it's one of the things that helps us finish manuscripts, not just chapters. So to summarize how we are going to introduce curiosity into our lives and into our writing practice. Go somewhere without knowing what you'll find. Be willing to find nothing useful. Encounter something unfamiliar and then sit in the quiet long enough to wonder about it. Because y'all, maybe we can't force ourselves to be curious, but we don't have to. We can choose to explore. We can wander without knowing where we're going. We can follow the idea that might lead nowhere. We can keep exposing ourselves to new things, new places, new ways of thinking, and then let ourselves wonder, give ourselves the space to ask questions. We can create the conditions where curiosity thrives. And I think that's an important distinction because it means we don't have to wait around for that magical feeling of curiosity or inspiration before we engage deeply with our work. We can take the first step, explore first, and let the questions come second. And in following them, we'll find that feeling of curiosity that leads to our best, most energizing writing sessions and a long-term feeling of satisfaction with our work. When I think about the stories I've been the most passionate about, curiosity is always a big part of the equation. And having the ability to create that experience instead of just waiting for it to arise can completely change the way we write.